We're here today talking on Leadership Live. Do your core values match your leadership style? Now, why is this important? You might be at that point in time where you're, oh, I need to change my career or I want to get to the next level, but I don't know what I want to do or how to make the right decision. Or maybe you are leading a team and it's just a struggle, right? You want them to be self-led, take initiative, be proactive, take accountability, and yet something isn't jiving in that team element. So, if either of those or many other reasons why you are your core values are important, this is a conversation for you today. All right, so we're going to dive into this, and just to kind of give all the perspective again, the core values, I'm going to pull it back up again. Here's what I call the leadership compass. Now, the leadership compass, one of those elements we've talked about vision before is a value. So one of the other core elements of the leadership compass is values. Now, why are values so important? Now, if we look back at a lot of different clients over the years, and one of my clients was really struggling with micromanaging her team, wasn't sure how to address things like her home versus work life balance and all these different elements, and was making the mistake of course, like, well, I want to get to the next level of my career, so I'm going to just work even harder. So would start first thing in the morning, checking her emails before even breakfast had occurred, and then as soon as breakfast was out of the way, would get into work and dig into it until late in the evenings. And by the time we started working together, she was exhausted. She was getting sick more often. She was really feeling I would say at the edges of burning out, because she was just, her way was of dealing with her position and her executive role was to continue to work harder and harder, which also translated into her teams, which meant things like all decisions had to be run by her first, that she wanted to be updated on every action that the team was taking. And she would be chasing and would actually be configuring all the reports for her colleagues as well, instead of holding them accountable. Now, what does this have to do with values? You may be asking. And I know that was the question that she had at the beginning. It's like, why are we talking about my values? I just want you to fix the problems. But here's something that you may not realize is we all live by our values every day, in and out. We just may not always be aware of them. So, for example, one of the values that this client of mine was unaware of was the high need and value of safety, not only physical safety but also psychological safety and emotional safety. And for her to ensure safety, that meant things like micromanaging her team, because she wanted to ensure that her reputation, her professional role, the KPIs that she was responsible for as a leader were being met. And that translated into specifically into really looking at every single thing that the team was doing, having them, she was meeting with them multiple times every week, because making sure she had to provide approval or making the decisions that were needed. And that took a lot of time, took a lot of energy, took a lot of it took a lot of stress in order to create that, not even create that environment, but to sustain that environment, all because she was driven by a need for safety. Here's another example. So I worked with, it was probably about a year ago now, with a director who was looking for a new role, and they had a fantastic role in their company, and it was a lot of firefighting, a lot of crisis management, wasn't as strategic, was too operational, right? Like, you go down a list of all the things that they didn't like about the role. So as we were walking through the process, again, one of the parts of the leadership edge formula is what I call the leadership compass. And they're the one of those elements we're talking about today is values. And we dug into what is valuable. So for example, I even had that today. One of my clients like, I just want more work-life balance. Okay, but what is it that you value about it? What is it in what does that mean? So for this person, this client who was looking for his next role was asking, well, I don't know what I do value family and I value my health and personal time and a number of other things on the list. Value maybe it was ambition and drive and then you start to rank them because in the ranking you can start asking yourself, all right, what's more important? Is value A more important than value B? Is value B more important than C? Is value C more important than A or B? Right? And then it creates your own filtering system. So what are the outcomes of this once you understand your values? So one situation, and the first that I was describing, she went from unaware that she had this very strong value of safety to consciously choosing what she wanted to value and what that looked like in terms of her actions. So what things were changed? Well, she valued accountability. So while she was acting from a space of safety, what she wanted to be acting from and the value that she wanted to hold was accountability. In that accountability, that meant communicating clear expectations, having direct communication, as well as having a follow through strategy. So, for example, if she had given a task to a team member that was clearly communicated, what are the expectations, what do you need to deliver, and by what date? If they did not meet that, what is the follow through? So, what is the consequence of not meeting that? And what is the benefit when they do, right? So you have to you celebrate when they meet it and have a follow through when there's a deadline missed. This translated to is she was able to clear up half her calendar. Imagine that, having your calendar almost in half from the amount of meetings and the conversations that you need to have, which elevated her role from a very operational role into a much more strategic role. In terms of her colleagues, she took her colleagues, instead of doing the work and prepping everything for them, held them accountable. Remember, accountability was one of those values. Held them accountable for ensuring that their reports, that they generated the reports, that they provided the reports to her on time so that she could create the overall report and analysis. Fantastic. What does values do? For the other example, when we're talking about when I was sharing that this individual is looking for their next role. Well, in that next role, there was a number of roles that came by but didn't match the values. So we created this filtering system. And as an example, I'll give you a third example here. Another client that I'm working with currently, she was looking at, well, do I go in this career path that I'm currently on, or do I choose a separate career path? Do I go in a different direction? And as we worked through and started off with, okay, what are your core values? Right? Let's list them off. I usually max the list at 10. Some people go for a little bit more if they can't get it, or sometimes even just 5. And we go through the list of, okay, well, if we stay in this current trajectory, in this current role, what does that mean for you? Does it meet your goals or your values and she listed her specific values. And then we did it with this new career direction. And when we started, it was like, oh, I just really don't know how to make a decision. I just need some confidence and I need this and maybe I need more input. And it's like, well, but if you don't have your filtering system clear, which is what I always love about core values, is it's a filtering system, but it also shares, once you really dig into it, you also start to look at, well, what does it mean for me and how do I live? This created the framework for her to make a very empowered decision as to which direction to choose, rather than looking for more feedback, because that's another thing that often happens. Okay, I need to make a major decision. Ooh, I don't know if I can do that. So let me gather more feedback. Let's get stuck in this analysis paralysis, make more pros and cons list. I will look for feedback. And as you're doing that, you're adding, but you're not necessarily taking anything away that would actually help you make a decision. So the core values, why do you need this? And what does it lead to? How do you get that to match your leadership style? Like I said, some things, if you're operating from a value of safety, well, you're likely your actions and the decisions that you make are all going to be led back to that. So you might be taking decisions that aren't as risky, which means you might be limiting your innovative abilities, your problem solving abilities. You might be limiting the team in terms of their performance, their capacity, what they can achieve, because in this instance, safety is important. When you move and be consciously choose your core values, all of a sudden something like accountability opens up. If you are saying that work-life balance is important, okay, let's dig into that. What does that mean? Is it your family time is important? Is your personal health that's important? Is it that you want your personal growth to be important? Well, then it starts to create, again, that filtering system where in the case of the director who is looking for a new role, they can look at positions and go, well, this is a role that I'd like, or this is not a role that fits with me. Yes, it sounds all like it has the great title, but it's missing these and these elements. And it makes their decision making so much easier. Also within your leadership when it comes to your teams. You might be micromanaging, then can we move that into I want to be more accountable. For example, because your core values are the ones you choose personally. What else? What are other things that it can mean? What are other values that I want to embody? Do I want to be able to take more risks? Okay, so what do I then value? Do you value innovation? Okay, if I value innovation, then that means that there are, in terms of my behaviors, in terms of my actions, there are certain risks that are associated with that. So when you are finding at times that maybe your role is draining, or even in your personal life, that your relationships aren't quite where they want to be, where you want them to be, or they're draining, or you're getting some conflicts personally or professionally, I always encourage, let's start looking at where are your values, because there can be a very clear misalignment between what you think your values are and what your actual values are that you're acting from. Because if I was to ask, for example, the first example, just out of the blue, like, what are your values? They would never have said safety. They would have said things like, well, I value ambition. I value, a collaboration and a good team environment. Okay. If you value those, then why are you doing these actions? Why are you micromanaging your team? Why are you having your team run every single decision or every single action for approval through you? And if that's the case, then this is the way you're acting, then what you really value is safety. So that creates the clarity in which you can start going, oh, wow, I can adapt my leadership style to be different, because then I can start selecting the values that are important to me and consciously act in that way. So when instead of, now I'm not discounting safety, right? But safety is a basic need for everybody. When she can let go of safety and really embrace accountability, she could also choose the actions that went with that. So what are actions that go with that? Well, she created a framework. Okay, these decisions are based on these criteria. This is a decision that you could make. It does not need to come across my desk. These are actions that you can take in making individuals responsible for a specific performance metric, rather than feeling that she needed to take the entire performance metric on her plate and be responsible for it, and then also ensure every action got done along the way. Right? Holding that team accountable meant that and creating that value and holding that value of accountability led to a completely different leadership style from her, it led to a completely different outcome for both for herself as well as for her team. So when you are considering your leadership style and how do you show up, by what kind of leader are you going to be, I really encourage you, and this is why within the Leadership Edge formula, each and every one of my clients goes through the exercise of core values, is to really look at what it is that you want to do, what you want to live by, because that is going to create your decision. It creates a framework for your decisions. It creates a framework for your actions. And honestly, your results are always led back to what are the things that you value. And you might not be aware of the values right now. And those values that you're unaware of right now could be the very things that are getting in the way for your leadership, for your career ambitions, for your next level step, for how you deal and manage with your team. All these things can be really affected by what you value. And it's so under the surface that it really needs to take the time to bring it back to the surface and to consciously choose, how do you want to value? What things do you value, I should say, and what is the impact of that in terms of your leadership, how you show up professionally and how you show up personally? Because let's be honest, if it's professionally, it's misaligned, I will bet you that it's also misaligned personally, causing extra strife, conflict, or even just stress in your personal life and your personal relationships. All right. I'm going to leave it there today. If you've got questions, as always, drop them in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. And I am hosting a workshop. This is on Thursday at 12:30 Central European Time, which is going to be all about how women in leadership can turn unheard ideas into buy-in within 7 days. So you're going to get my number one process on how do you create visibility as well as buy-in for your ideas and for yourself in your organization. So join me. I've got the Zoom link. Right now it's a Zoom link. You can click the Zoom link and get registered for that, either up or below, not sure, depending on the platform you're watching this from. And if you otherwise, just drop me 7 days and DM me 7 days, and I will make sure to get you the link and you can register there as well. All right. Thank you so much. Any questions, drop them in the comments, and I will talk to you again next